So what are the rules that govern the world? I mean, really, think about it. Is it a bunch of equal countries all playing by the same handbook, or is it something else entirely? Understanding this idea of world order is absolutely critical right now. Because for the first time in a very long time, we're seeing a massive clash between two totally different visions, one championed by the United States and the other by China. How they figure this out is going to define our entire century.
Okay, to really get to the heart of this, we've got to understand the rule books each side is playing from. So here's our game plan. First, we'll lay out the current rules of the world. Then, we'll dive into China's ancient concept of all under heaven, before swinging over to America's universal mission. After that, we'll see exactly how these visions collide and what that means for the huge test facing all of us today.
All right, so before we can really grasp the challenge, we have to understand the current set of rules. You could almost call it the default operating system for the entire world. It's a system that was born out of European conflict centuries ago, and it's called the Westphalian system.
The core idea here, it's all about balance. Think of it like a neighborhood of independent houses. Everyone agrees where their property lines are, and no single household gets to dictate the rules for everybody else, right? Problems get solved through negotiation and diplomacy, not by one big house dominating all the others. This idea of co-equal states, that's basically the default setting for how we think about the world today.
Now, let's flip that idea completely on its head and look at China's historical concept of order. It's pretty much the exact opposite. For thousands of years, China's worldview wasn't based on a balance of equals. Not at all. It was based on a universal hierarchy, with China at the absolute, undisputed center. And here's the crucial part. In this system, other societies weren't seen as peers. They were seen as tributaries. So diplomacy wasn't really about negotiation. It was a set of rituals for outsiders to come and acknowledge China's cultural and moral superiority. I mean, think about this for a second. For centuries, what we now call foreign policy was literally handled by China's Ministry of Rituals. And this quote, wow, it illustrates the perspective perfectly. When Great Britain sent an envoy way back in 1793 to ask for trade and diplomatic relations, this was part of the emperor's official response. And you have to understand, from his worldview, this wasn't an insult. It was just a simple statement of fact. Europe had nothing China wanted or needed, and the very idea of treating Britain as an equal was just, well, it was absurd to him.
You see, China's preferred method was almost always psychological influence over brute force. This ancient strategy from a Han Dynasty minister shows exactly how they thought about managing outsiders. The goal wasn't to conquer, but to entice, to awe, and to kind of corrupt them with superior culture and luxury. The strategy was crystal clear. You don't conquer barbarians with armies. You captivate them with a better way of life until they willingly accept your central role.
All right, now let's pivot to the American vision. It's a much, much younger concept, of course, but it's no less powerful. It's this really revolutionary idea that America's own principles, things like liberty, democracy, and self-government, weren't just for Americans. They were a blueprint for the entire world.
This right here, this is what makes American foreign policy so unique and, let's be honest, often so controversial. The goal has never just about protecting its own interests. It's been about actively spreading its values. The core belief is that a world full of democracies would be a safer, better world for everyone. It's not just a foreign policy, it's a mission. Now, this slide perfectly captures the constant tug-of-war that's always been at the heart of American foreign policy. On one side, you've got Theodore Roosevelt, the pragmatist, the balancer, who saw America's job as basically keeping the global system in equilibrium. And on the other side, you've got Woodrow Wilson, the idealist, the crusader, who saw America's role as a moral mission to spread democracy. This tension, this back and forth, it defines America's role on the world stage.
So, what happens when these two profoundly different ideas of order, China's cultural hierarchy and America's universal mission, are forced to actually deal with each other on the same global stage? Well, you get a history of friction, of misunderstanding, and of outright conflict.
I mean, this relationship didn't exactly start with a friendly handshake. The Opium Wars violently dragged China into this Western system. The Korean War was a brutal, direct military conflict. Even the famous opening in the 70s was a cold, strategic calculation against a common enemy. And all of that brings us to today, where the rivalry is more direct and all-encompassing than it has ever been.
All this history brings us right to the critical, flashing question of our time. The old, Western-led order is being seriously challenged. China feels like it had no say in writing the rules that it's now expected to follow, and the United States sees its core values as completely non-negotiable. So in this environment, what are the rules?
And this brings us to our final section, the ultimate test of the 21st century. Right now, the US and China are both indispensable pillars of the world order, but they're also deeply ambivalent about the very system they're holding up. And they're deeply ambivalent about each other.
This table just lays it all out crystal clear. Just look at how differently they see the world. For the US, legitimacy comes from spreading democracy. For China, it's about cultural superiority. For the US, diplomacy is a bargaining process to solve problems. For China, it's a ritual to affirm who's on top. These aren't just policy disagreements. As you can see, we are talking about two fundamentally different operating systems for how the world should work.
And what makes this clash so incredibly dangerous is something totally new. For the first time in its history, as this chart shows, the United States is facing a rival of comparable economic weight. This isn't just a philosophical debate anymore. It's a real-world competition between two giants, each with a profoundly different vision for how everything should be run.
And here are the fault lines. This is where those deep historical mindsets erupt into today's tensions. Every single one of these friction points, from human rights to the military to tech, is a direct result of the clash between America's universal mission and China's vision of a hierarchical order where it gets to set the terms.
And that leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? This is the single greatest test of statesmanship of our time. Can these two systems find a way to coexist without a catastrophic conflict? It's not just a challenge for Washington and Beijing, it is the challenge that will define the future for every single one of us.